And now, live from the studios of Freedom's Phoenix, Ernest Hancock.
Turn on the tube, what do I see? A whole lot of people crying, don't blame me. They point their crooked little fingers at everybody else. Spend all the time feeling sorry for themselves. Victim of this, victim of that. Your mama's too thin and your daddy's too fat. Get over it. Get over it. All this running and
Yeah, get over it here and declare your independence of me, Ernest Hancock, my good friend, Marc J. Victor, criminal defense attorney extraordinaire, that we've used a lot. Oh, yeah, I was slinging your name around when we had this meeting last week with the TSA, police department, all that kind of stuff. One of the officers, he goes like this. He goes, and that was great of the judge to stick around for a little bit. And,
he's a great guy.
And talk with us a little bit more. And you definitely want to go to the Freedom Summit, and get to visit with these guys, because Mark's going to moderate an hour and a half at least, a 2-hour lunch with him and Judge Jim Gray on everything. And it's always good to have Judge, you give them what for. And a lot of people do. I mean, they come just, I want to ask the judge a question, so they're going to get all over it. The one thing that Mark and I have been doing is we kind of tag team. There are many events that he will be the attorney on before we have to go to jail and explain, okay, now you don't want to do this while you're doing this and this, so we understand the process, because they're sneaky, man. They always want to do some sneaky stuff. So we've been pretty good about being able to avoid the landmines. Well, one of the guys, the officers go, well, if you don't ID yourself, well, we're going to do this. Is number 3 up? Go ahead and turn number 3 off. So what he did is he goes and he says, I got an echo. So what he does is he says, I'm going to go ahead and show you this story that you have on Freedom's Phoenix about Shelton, 4409, getting arrested for not IDing himself. He was perfectly within his rights, legal. You became the attorney on that. I'm appalled thing, banging on the, defense attorney table. You're talking to the judge, and finally you got what? A rule, is it 20?
We got an acquittal on all counts, but we had to go to trial. See, that's the thing that you really have to consider when you start, if you're thinking about going down this road. I mean, a guy like Shelton, and I've referred to Shelton publicly and privately as a hero. I mean, in my view, of course, nobody's perfect, but the guy's a hero in terms of fighting for freedom. And, the reason I say that is because, yeah, he was right. And standing your ground, knowing you're right, is one thing. Standing your ground, knowing you're right, in getting hauled off to jail and spending the night in jail and getting charged with criminal offenses and not taking a deal and going to trial.
And getting stomped on your feet to get you to volunteer or comply with fingerprinting and doing, they were torturing him.
Yeah, I mean, the guy could have just given his name to the judge, but Shelton's a guy who they rolled out in front of the judge and said, state your name. And he said, I don't have to tell you my name. Put him back into jail. Shelton says, I'm go back into jail.
Now, the point is what happened is the officer goes, well, what happens if you don't ID, and then he holds up his phone to that story. Well, of course, the rest of the story was
who held up their phone to this story?
The head of community services for the Phoenix Police Department.
Oh, so they were familiar with what happened.
Oh yeah. No, he had it on his smartphone.
Well, it's nice to know that they read Freedom's Phoenix.
Yeah. Well, the point that they were trying to make is you don't ID, you go to jail. Well, he didn't.
Apparently, they don't actually read the story.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
They didn't go to the other part, where it was, he was all acquitted. But I'm going, wow, do you even know it's Rule 20, right? Is that what you call it?
Right.
I go, it was a Rule 20 to all charges, and we made a big woo-hoo out of it, and Marc J. Victor's pounding the table doing I'm appalled, defense attorney thing, and I go, we're trying to avoid that.
And not only that, the other part of the story, which is to be continued, is we're dragging that officer into federal court now on a civil rights case.
Oh, that's still going?
Oh, yeah, that's still going.
See, they just, I'm trying to explain to them, I'm going, are you sure you want to play this game? We're just like, we're trying to avoid these things. And they were not comfortable with the conversation. And it went for a couple of hours. They took like a 20-minute, 30-minute break in the middle of it, then came back and tried to, do the chest authority thing. And it kind of, now they're calmed down. They know what we're doing this afternoon. We're making our little, TSA, Transportation Safety Accessories opt-out bag. So we got, fresh gloves for when you... smearing down on one person, smeared over on me.
It's really a sad state of affairs that it's come to this, isn't it, Ernie?
It's exactly what we knew was coming back when our first summit in 2001, 3 weeks after 9/11. And when people were canceling their flights, and this TSA pat-down thing's got a lot of people don't want to fly either. I've been hearing that, too.
Yeah.
And when they did this for the 9/11 happened, we had our summit 3 weeks later, we almost canceled it. A lot of people were kind of, I'm not, and then we go, nah.
Well, we didn't almost cancel it. The show was going to go on no matter what.
Well,
and I remember we talked about it. We took the position that, look, freedom is too important of an issue. We're going to march forward no matter what.
Exactly. I mean, let's put it this way. Not that the question of whether we would cancel it came up.
It did.
And we talked about it, and we just go... Nah, we know what's coming. We know that there's all kinds of legislation sitting up on top of a shelf somewhere, and they're going to bundle it together, and they're going to call it something like the Patriot Act, and they're going to ram this stuff through, and then here we go.
And there's actually an interesting question here. I mean, and the question really is, how far do they actually get to go? I mean, here we are now. We're in a situation where they're, in essence, taking naked pictures of people and groping them in their private areas and tearing through all of their things and coming up with these, what I think are rather ridiculous rules about how many ounces of this
history
or that.
will look back on that. They'll look back.
It's complete insanity. Does there ever come a point where the American people really, because the American people are the ones who are responsible for this, and they're the ones who have the power to change it. Is there ever going to come a point, when I turn around, when I go through those checkpoints, I turn around and I say, is there going to come a point where the American people are going to say, we've had enough of this. This is this is just simply un-American.
I don't know. It's kind of starting, but I don't know. Well, what was interesting, Judge Buttrick on his way out was saying that, he had a prepared speech that he was going to do for the Freedom Summit. And we were wanting to make sure they had time, a 2-hour program. All three of you get to do the criminal justice system on trial. And he's like, well, we'll make it more free-flowing, have people ask questions and do that. But there is one part in my speech that I did want to address. Do you remember what the title was, what he called it?
This issue about whether or not this unquestioned loyalty to the law is something that's good or bad for America. That I'm paraphrasing, of course.
I mean, and the first question out of your mouth is, how can you do that as a judge? He goes, hey, man, I'm only limited from endorsing candidates and parties and stuff. I can say whatever I want.
Yeah, Buttrick's a special guy. There's just no doubt about that. I mean, he's saying in another ways, he's one of us who's on the bench. I mean, he's a true American. He's a guy who supports freedom. He gets it. He understands the arguments, and somehow, some way, he has been able to sort of wiggle himself through the system and keep his position as a judge to this point.
One thing that was interesting is that he's always been very libertarian. I mean, from the first time when we first met him and talked to him about running for governor back in '94, he's hardcore. There's no compromise. And that was the one thing. That's why when I compared it last year when he was one of the speakers then, too, I said, well, we knew what was going to happen with the Ron Paul revolution and all the power behind it and the enthusiasm and so on. Because when you have a principled guy that you don't have to make excuses for, you don't have to always be backpedaling, you don't have to, question or separate yourself from or anything. You can just put your head down and plow. You just go work for him, do him, say, I don't know, talk to him, what he said. And we knew that because Dr. Paul had been to 2 of our summits before his running for president already. So we already knew his rhetoric. We had already gone through this in '94 with Buttrick. when you have a great candidate, you put your head down and you plow.
And Buttrick is as good as you could ever possibly get. I mean, when you guys were talking in the earlier segment before I was on and you were asking some questions about how did he get here and there, I mean, Buttrick has a great resume. I mean, he's really a very, very qualified, skilled kind of guy.
Harvard law grad with summa cum laude. He's, whatever you call that. He's got, what was that? He was a Vietnam vet in intelligence. He had all kinds of, he's a senior partner of a big law firm, and so it was just, the guy had skills, and it scared the bad guys. They didn't like it. They needed to make him a judge, get him out of politics. I think that may have had something to do with it. Well, for the next hour, Mark and I are going to be talking about, past summits, this summit, criminal justice, his job, my job, how they overlap, and how we keep each other out of, well, he mostly keeps me out of jail, but he doesn't get called too much. But what we'll go ahead and do is we'll share with you all the insides of how we operate here in Phoenix and be an inspiration to other people around the country. We're enjoying ourselves. We hope you will too. We'll be right back.